So what if I told you that every single failure, not just your own, but your entire team's, was completely and totally your fault? That is the radical idea at the heart of extreme ownership, a leadership philosophy from former Navy SEALs Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And trust me, it's a concept that absolutely flips the script on how we look at responsibility, failure, and ultimately how we win. But before we get to the solution, we have to look at the problem. And it's an instinct that we all have, right? It's the blame game. When a project falls apart or a mission goes south, our default setting is to start looking around, trying to find someone or something else to point the finger at. And let's be real for a second. When a project you're in charge of just completely blows up, what's that immediate, gut-level reaction? Is it to find a convenient excuse to deflect, or is it to turn that spotlight right back on yourself?
This comparison really lays it all out. The blame mindset, it's a total trap. It just creates a cycle of excuses, which means you never grow, and it just poisons a team's culture. But the ownership mindset, that's the engine for growth. It's all about finding solutions, which means you're always getting better, and it rallies everyone together.
So, what's the way out of this destructive cycle? Well, this is where Willink and Babin drop the core idea that changes the entire game.
And there it is. Extreme ownership is simply taking total responsibility for everything that affects your mission. And I mean everything. Not just the stuff you did directly, but every little piece. How your team performs, how good the plan was, the final outcome, you own all of it. Period.
This whole idea boils down to one of their core beliefs. There are no bad teams, there are only bad leaders. If your team isn't getting the job done, that responsibility lands squarely on your shoulders. The buck doesn't just stop with the leader, it actually starts there.
Now, it's really important to get this part right. The word extreme here isn't about being some over-the-top, yelling and screaming kind of person. Nope. It means stretching your sense of responsibility into areas that might not even seem logical. It's about owning the mistakes of every single person on your team, because as the leader, you're the one who's ultimately accountable for how they perform.
Okay, I know this might sound, well, pretty intense, but there's a huge reason why it's so effective. When you adopt this philosophy, it creates this powerful ripple effect that transforms not just you, but your entire team, your entire organization. The result is this incredible culture of improvement. Just think about how it plays out. A mistake happens. Instead of wasting all that time and energy figuring out who to blame, a leader who gets extreme ownership just immediately says, "That's on me." That simple act allows for a calm, clear-headed look at what actually went wrong, which leads to real solutions that make sure it doesn't happen again.
You know, this creates a massive shift in power. When you blame someone else, you're basically making yourself a victim, just sitting around waiting for them to fix it. But ownership, that puts you right back in the driver's seat. All of a sudden, you're not powerless anymore. You're the one with the power to solve the problem.
And when a leader starts acting this way, it's contagious. It spreads through the team like wildfire. People are inspired to take that same level of ownership over their own jobs. It encourages people to work together instead of against each other. And it frees up the leader to stop micromanaging and start focusing on the big picture, strategic mission. This brings us to a really crucial, kind of counterintuitive part of leadership. A great leader takes on all the blame when things go wrong, basically acting as a shield for the team. But when things go right, when you get that big win, they push all the credit, all the praise down to the team. That kind of humility builds an incredible amount of trust and proves that the mission comes before the leader's ego. All right, so we get the why, but how do you actually put this stuff into practice? Let's break down the actionable rules that make up the core of the extreme ownership playbook.
Willink and Babin actually distill this philosophy into 4 laws of combat. And don't let the name fool you. These rules are just as deadly effective in a boardroom as they are in a battlefield.
First up, keep it simple. Seriously, complexity is the #1 enemy of getting things done. If your team doesn't clearly understand the mission and what their specific role is, well, the plan has pretty much failed before it even started. Real leadership is all about communicating a simple, clear vision that everyone can get behind. Second, when chaos hits, and you know it always does, the gut reaction is to try and fix everything all at once. The real key is to do the exact opposite. You relax, you look around, you figure out the single most important thing that needs to be done. Then, you focus all your team's energy on getting that one thing done. Third, you have got to be decisive. You're never going to have 100% perfect information. It just doesn't exist. And waiting for it leads to paralysis, which is almost always the worst decision you can make. A good leader makes the best call they can with the intel they have, and then moves forward full steam ahead. And finally,
Leadership is all about balance. Any strength you have, whether it's confidence or aggression or discipline, if you take it too far, it becomes a massive weakness. The real goal is to find that delicate balance. I mean, think about discipline versus flexibility. Too much discipline, and your team gets super rigid, they can't adapt when things change. But too much flexibility, you just get chaos. The best leaders learn how to operate right in that sweet spot in the middle.
So, when you put it all together, what's the ultimate takeaway here? Well, it really comes down to a fundamental change in how you see your role in the world, whether you're leading a company or, just leading your own life.
This quote from Leif Babin just nails it. Your real standards, they aren't defined by the great speeches you give. They're defined by the poor performance you're willing to accept. Every single time you let something subpar slide, you are setting a new, lower standard for your entire team.
And let's be perfectly clear, this is not just some manual for military commanders or big-shot CEOs. It is a mindset for parents, for students, for artists, for anyone who wants to stop making excuses and start taking control of their life and getting the results they want. So I'm going to leave you with this challenge. Forget about yesterday's excuses or what you're going to do tomorrow. What is one thing, right now, today, that you can stop blaming on someone or something else and take complete, total, extreme ownership of? Because right there, that's where the real change begins.